This all happened within the last 2 to 3 hours. My mum and I have been trying to catch the ice cream truck all summer, as they have certain ice cream bars that you really can't get anywhere else around here. We were in the middle of watching a show when we suddenly heard the ice cream truck outside. It was loud, signifying that it was close. I got up and went to the door. I saw that it was in front of our house and began to say that, it's too late. But then I realised it was slowing down, not driving away. Now, this wasn't an, there's someone coming, I should stop, slow down. It was a, I've been slowing down to a stop since before you opened the door kind of slow down. My mum told me to go out and make sure he didn't drive away. It was odd, as it was around 9 p.m, but we just wanted our ice cream. My mum came outside and we ordered. The guy was quiet, but said that he stopped because he heard voices. Now, no one was outside, and we were inside when we were talking. There was an open garage door a few houses down, but no one was there. He was able to find the flavour I had asked for, but had some trouble finding the one my mum asked for. I just saw it. I just ate one. I figured that he was new to the job and just nervous, so I thought nothing of it. We paid and went back inside. Once we got inside, however, I noticed that mine had been opened. I asked my mum if she had opened it, as she was the one who had both the treats. She said no. She offered me hers, as we both knew neither of us wanted to eat an opened ice cream bar, when she noticed that hers was really puffed up. 9 p.m. The music suddenly turned on when we both heard it. It didn't slowly fade in as if it had been on the whole time. It slowed to a stop in front of our house before I even opened the door. He was quiet and gave us 2 suspicious ice cream bars. He sped away after that, not stopping for anyone else. Just 15 minutes ago, I called my mum in from the garage to tell her that the cats were trying to catch this bug that looked like a wasp or something. As she came in, she saw something through the kitchen window. She rushed me to the front door in the next room, and when she opened it, a different car drove away. I didn't see the full thing, but she says it was pulled over with the lights on and quickly peeled out of there when we opened the door. My dad just came home and we told him about everything, and he thinks it's odd, but that's about it. Sure, the 2 incidents could be totally innocent, coincidental, but it's just too weird. Creepy people that we saw tonight, let's not meet again. It all started about a month ago when a man started banging on my door at 6 p.m. at night, yelling for Mike to come out, and that he needs to see him and get cigarettes. I told him he had the wrong house and to leave. There had never been a Mike in my house. He got even more aggressive, calling me a liar and how he was going to come in and beat that skinny bitch you live with. I tried to call the non-emergency police line because I have never called 911, but they didn't pick up. Looking back, it was stupid, but it was instinct. And after some more yelling, he leaves. I called my father, who was across town, to come home and what was going on, and then he showed up. He called 911 to file a report. The guy came back and started screaming at him. Cops were called again, showed up an hour after the call, but couldn't find him, and then told me to defend myself if it came to it. I ended up staying with a friend for the night because I didn't feel safe at home. I could be a strong person, but I don't think I can do much against a drugged out man. What made the situation even scarier to me is that as I was going through my driveway camera photos, it shows him walking up to my house hours before and I had no clue. I have really bad anxiety, so the next few days were filled with paranoia and stress. But I managed to finally calm down and convince myself that that was the end of it. Come that weekend, my father went on a trip with his girlfriend, so I was left home alone for a couple of days. I had just put on a scary movie when I heard the screaming start again and a loud bang. I pulled up my camera and see that he is back, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk and has thrown our trash can over, again screaming for Mike. I call 911 again and they show up within minutes this time and are able to stop him down the street. They tell me there's nothing they can do since he hasn't actually committed a crime yet, but if he comes back, to call them again and then they'll have more reason to hold him. Things were quiet for a few weeks after that. I again believed that that was the end of it, until today. This morning, my father and I got in an argument, so I wanted to take a walk to clear my mind. I went across the street to the park and sat by a tree, watching cars pass every now and then. I noticed a truck drive down the left side of the park and turned to the street my back is facing. He waved as he passed, so I did too think it was just a man going to work. I wanted to show that I was okay. He then pulls off onto the right side of the park, stops, makes a U-turn to come back. Red flags instantly go off in my head, so I get up to start walking home. I look back and see he's turned off his headlights and is trailing me. I get to the front door of my house and he slows. I get a better look at his face this time, and it looks like the man who's been harassing me. From the physical characteristics to his red baseball cap, he just glared at me like I took everything in his life away from him. I get to the door and I try to barge in, but my father put the chain on in anger of me walking out, so I had to yell to him that I was being followed and to open the door. He opens it, and by then the truck was gone down the street. I'm terrified to leave my home. I don't have a car to get anywhere quickly, I have to bike, but even now I'm too scared to do that. I don't know who that man is or what his intentions were, but I live in paranoia, waiting. This was very recent, 6 days ago to be exact. I'm a huge fan of hiking or just simply taking walks in the woods. The only time I go alone is when I am in the woods and I live near, and this day I was not. I was with my friend Lars in a walk about 3 hours from my house, and we were planning on travelling around and staying at motels in the meantime. That day we decided to take a walk in a popular area for people who like to walk in the woods like me. The catch was that this woods was freaking huge. Not really bad to us though, we were thrilled. There wasn't much, it was pretty. We escaped the crowd, but every now and then we would see someone walking by. We walked for a few hours until we got to this spot, not too different from the rest except for one thing. Nobody else was in this section. That's why me and Lars took this turn. The others had turned off. After a while of walking down this path, we spotted a man, a naked man. We gave each other the look and turned around. The man was slightly off the path, bent over and looking at something. As Lars and I were walking back, talking about the strange man, I heard a voice behind me. I turned to see the man. He was talking to us about the bug he'd picked up. I got a good look at him. He was a bit tall, nothing crazy, bald with a few brown hairs beginning to grow, but completely naked. I flashed the man a smile and sped up. We got out of that place as fast as we could. Once we got to the car, we kind of laughed. Yes, it was creepy, but more weirdly funny. The car ride was nothing, so I skipped to the motel. As we are checking into the motel, we see the man walk in. He was a bit hard to recognise considering the fact that he now had clothes on, just torn up clothes. He waited behind us in line. Good thing we were almost done checking in, because as soon as we did, we went right to our rooms and locked it with no thought. Now it was definitely creepy, like, was he following us? Was it a coincidence? We both decided we weren't going to stay at this hotel for more than one night. Heck, I don't even want to stay there one night, but if it wasn't for Lars telling me it's going to be okay. That night, Lars went outside for a cigarette. I don't smoke, but no way was I going to stay in the room alone, so I followed him outside and we chatted for a bit. After a few minutes, I see this guy walk out the doors. Lars puts out his cigarette and began to walk inside, but before we got inside, the guy pulled out what was probably a knife or something else sharp. It was dark, so I couldn't see, and started carving through his sleeve and right at his arm. I saw liquid trickling to the ground and immediately knew it was blood. I rushed into the lobby and Lars got the idea and followed. We alerted the staff, but by the time they got someone to come out, the guy was gone. To this day, I have so many questions like, did he follow us? Why was he naked? Why was he doing that to himself? I will probably never, ever know the answer, but honestly, I am still spooked. I don't know what I will do if I ever see him again, but I hope I don't have to think about that. So, for context, I live away from home for school, while my sister lives at home with our parents. Both of our rooms face the street and are right next to each other. I have a full-length mirror in my room opposite the window, so if I looked in the mirror, I'd see what was in the window. So around Thanksgiving of 2021, I had just gotten home from school and was relishing my ability to stay up late, and so was my sister. After our parents went to sleep, I was just laying on my bed, watching YouTube. I had my window blinds open and for some reason I just felt the urge to look up, so I looked in the mirror. Outside, someone pops up from below the window and bangs on my window super hard 3 times, then sprints away. I am shaking, on the verge of tears. I run into my sister's room and explain what has happened. She is a bit shaking up too, but we chalked it up to a dumb teenager. Just a few nights later at midnight, I see a text from my sister. Did you hear that? There was somebody in the window. I felt that same fear. I take my headphones off and begin to get up when I hear 5 super loud bangs come from my sister's room. I run over and she looks really shaken. She says, He just ran to the side of the house, the wall that's right next to my bed, and he banged on my wall, right where my head is. We were both frozen with fear. We made theories on who it was, but neither of us were the type to have any enemies. There were no teenagers on our street. None of this even made sense. Sometimes I feel that same chill in the air, and sometimes I think I hear banging. The fear of seeing a face in the window isn't as rare as many would hope, so I'm praying I never meet this boy ever again. Several years ago, I was in the midst of an acrimonious divorce from my then husband, full of crazy allegations and typical angry filings centred around custody of our child. As many people with divorces, friends and professional colleagues seem to pick one side or the other. In my case, there was one sort of professional contact who reached out to me after hearing about the divorce, who offered to be a witness for my case because of some of the experiences he related that I had previously been unaware of regarding my ex's behaviour out at networking events. After this initial call, he started calling on a semi-regular basis to make sure I was okay. This wasn't someone I knew well prior to the separation, and he was much older than I was, but claimed to have had experience with divorce and custody, and I figured it was a good idea to be polite and not alienate him. Since his testimony was very important, as per my lawyer, I kept things friendly, but I always had a weird feeling about him. After a few months, he called one day that my son was very sick, and when I told him I couldn't talk and I explained why, he offered to run to the store for me, which I honestly appreciated. But after that, he was dropping by the house uninvited, or he would stop by with cookies for my son, etc. And again, I kept telling myself to keep things polite, the divorce is coming soon, don't make this guy mad. He had called me out of the blue, and I was worried at this point that I was walking a very fine line between polite but clearly not interested, and that if he got mad he might decide to go and testify for my ex and say who knows what. During this time, he had also helped me set up a security camera system that my dad had mailed me, and at one point I needed someone to walk my dog, and he had offered to do it. He used and returned a spare key the same day. One evening he showed up while I was painting and insisted on sticking around to help, even though I was having my starting over catharsis and wanted to do it alone. Just after the painting day, he came around again, uninvited and unannounced, with magazine photos of decor, and started carrying on in this manic way about how we could finish decorating the house. I was so weirded out that I had to make an excuse to leave, and I started ignoring his calls. I took my son and dog to stay with my parents for several weeks to avoid a drop-in. I came home just for custody exchanges. We came home a few weeks later, thinking he would have gotten the hint, and it was a quiet day. But the following morning, I took my son out on an outing, something like the zoo, and we both came back hot and tired. I put my kiddo down for a nap in my bed, and I decided to close my eyes with him. I woke up maybe an hour or so later, and it took me a moment to realise that something was way off. As I'm blinking off the sleep, I realised that there was a rose bush sitting on my bedside table that I had most definitely not put there. There was a post-it note on it, something about planting it in the yard. I started shaking immediately because I recognised the handwriting, and I stood up to go splash some water in my face and then decide whether or not to call my parents or the police. I didn't want any trouble because of the divorce. As I stepped into my bathroom, I realised that the mirror was covered, and I mean covered, in post-it notes, all with super creepy messages that were intended as like love notes or with affection, but which all scared me. I was still waking up trying to figure out how these notes had possibly gotten into my house. My front door was definitely locked, but as I went room to room, the notes were everywhere, and I mean hundreds of post-it notes covering the walls, in my cabinets. There was one even inside my coffee maker. I started grabbing all of them and then putting them into a pile. When I got to the one in the kitchen that made my blood run cold, it said, "You're cute when you think no one is watching you." And I realised that there was a security camera pointed right where the note was left. The one that he had helped me set up months earlier when I didn't think he was a psychopath. I immediately called my parents in hysterics and sent them a bunch of photos, and my dad insisted that I should not call the police. Remember the custody battle? But then he said he would drive over and change the locks and put a chain on the door. We immediately changed the passwords on the security cameras, which had been installed to document if my ex tried to break into the house. So there was one on the front porch, but 3 inside the house, including one in my bedroom. This man could apparently see and hear everything that had been going on inside my house for months. The security cameras, I realised he had just paid attention to my passwords when I was setting them up in the system. But the only way I can figure out how he got into the house is he must have made a copy of the key when that day that I gave it to him, you know. And because my dog had gotten to know him, he wouldn't have barked to warn me, which also terrifies me. I mean, this man had been in my house for a long time. There's no way he could have put that many notes up really quick. And he was right next to my face and only feet away from my son while we were sleeping, and then somehow he thought that that was okay. I left and stayed with my parents again for a few days, afraid of what he was going to do when he realised that now he was both physically and digitally locked out of my house. When I came home, my son had gone to his dad's for the night, and I was home alone, on the phone with another friend from out of town. At around 10 p.m, this man showed up at the door, pounding on it, trying the locks, screaming obscenities and demanding to be let into his house. Gone were all these niceties. This was someone completely furious and derailed. All I could do was hide in my bedroom until he left, what felt like maybe an hour later. This was on St. Patrick's Day, so I'm sure he'd been drinking. After that, there were several other times someone would start knocking on my door in the middle of the night. Always when my son wasn't home. I think he was crazy, but not that crazy, and figured if I called the police, he would get into more trouble if my son was there. But he knew the schedule, so I know it was him. He tried reaching out using fake social media accounts several times, always getting blocked. Years later, I discovered that he had friended my mum on Facebook and was therefore still able to see all the photos of us that she'd posted or shared. And there was a huge argument when I saw a conversation that they were having about me and how he could get back into my life. She had left her computer logged in. I sold that house 2 years later, still finding new notes even as I was packing. And I am more than relieved that he no longer knows where I live. I don't post photos of my new house online. Not the front anyway. And I have changed the privacy settings on my social media accounts. I avoid all the places he used to go, the networking events he attended, and I stay as far under the radar as possible. I could never bring myself to play back the security camera videos because I was traumatised enough, and I didn't want to see just how much danger we could have been in. Hopefully he never sees this post, but you know who you are. I hope our paths don't cross again.